not as early as a person could use Revit, actually use it on real projects. And when I visited his office on a vacation in Fort Collins, Colorado, it was the first office I'd ever been in that had all Revit on all the screens. There was no AutoCAD. Didn't see any black screens, so that was quite a shock to the system. So that was 2003, summer of 2003, I think. So Scott, he was one of those guys in the earliest days of Revit who was freely sharing content he made, wisdom, and they were doing real projects that was a real eye-opener. It could be done. Revit wasn't to be feared at that point. So Scott, pioneer in Revit. It's going to be really an awesome chance to listen to this guy. And Derek, on the other side of the equation here, I don't know Derek as deeply, but he just told me he won the 2012 for his documentation award. Yes, sir. Documentation award here at RTC, so he's no slouch. He's been using Revit since 2008. And he works in the same city, Florida, Orlando, as Scott. And their topic here, he's going to introduce Derek a bit further. So I'll turn it over to them now, but you're in for a treat.
Thank you, that was it. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, sir.
All right, welcome to Architectural Jazz, the psychology of project collaboration. So a little about myself, just got introduced, but I'm a longtime Revit user. You can read about that stuff. The reason I'm teaching this class, I've always had an interest in psychology. I minored in it in college, and I'm the son of a psychiatric social worker, and I had a lot of problems as a youth, and so I got sent to psychiatrists a lot. So I've got some history in psychology as well as Revit. I've done a lot of speaking and stuff like that. And Derek here, I'll let you talk a little bit about yourself.
There's nothing really special about me. Got a wife, got 2 kids. Love to make things better. And part of my job at Coach and Peterson is to do just that, is to go out and look at other industries and what they're doing, still methodologies, bring them back and see how we can apply them.
Turn our nice jazz music down here. All right, so now about you. How about let's stand up. This is a class we learned from Bastrap. We need to get our bodies moving, get those endorphins flowing. So let's just stand up real quick.
Come on.
And meet somebody you haven't met yet. So if you could just introduce yourself, find out your name.
Did you? There we go.
I'm Scott. Juice, pleasure to meet you. What industry are you in? Architecture. Architecture? Good deal. Let's come back together. Did anyone find out anybody's primary job role? How many architects do we have in the room? A lot of architects, engineers? Just 2. Man, I wanted some more. Interior designers? All right. How about owners? No owners come to these conferences, do they? Software developers? See a couple in here. Politicians? And we know there's no HR staff, so that's all good.
Before we move on, Scott.
Oh, yeah.
I shook a couple of your guys' hands. Of those of you that shook my hand, what did you notice about my handshake?
Good and firm.
Huh?
Good and firm.
Anybody else? Did you notice anything about it? So in psychology, one of the things is making people feel accepted and safe and inviting, right? Send over here real quick, Jed. Shoot. So when I shook people's hands, I did this. I don't know if you guys just saw that, but look who's on top. I'm on top. I'm dominating right now, right? Not very inviting. When you shake hands, if you'll actually give them the upper hand, you're actually inviting them in and telling them that it's safe. And when you do that, your people skills and everything have a chance to flourish, and your first first thought that people have of you is a little more inviting. So, just a thought.
All right. So we have an agenda here, and you'll notice the time doesn't add up to 75 minutes. I know we're going to talk about personality traits, and mine means that if I shoot for 15 minutes, my boss knows it'll take me 3 times as long as that. So I've left a little room in here because I know I'm going to run long. So we're going to kind of bounce back and forth. Derek's going to lead discussion on psychology, jazz. We're going to give you what is this class about. And then I'm going to talk about collaboration. I think we've got some exciting stuff for you. And then, assuming we don't ramble too long in those first 2 sections, we've got some technology that we use for collaboration. I work remotely with a company that's all over the country, so virtual co-location and becoming part of the team is huge for me. So I want to get to that if I can. All right, so we got some goals. We hope that you leave here understanding what motivates and demotivates you as an individual and as a team, and how to orient your teams, put your teams together in a way that's successful for you both personally and for the project that you're working on. And then we'll share some tools that help us facilitate communication. And basically, big picture, I've taught Revit at Autodesk University, at Revit Technology Conference, and I'm really good at the computer. I'm not so good with people. And I bet there's a lot of us in this room that have that same issue. And I find that projects don't not get done well because we're bad at our software. We're bad at our people skills. So I'm hopeful that this is one of the most important classes you take at RTC this year.
Being human in a tech-filled world.
So, wait, I want to go back. I've got a random thought for us. Perry Brown was the managing director at WATG, where I worked a few years ago. And he said something that was really motivational to me. He said, Scott, I would get really stressed out about project deadlines and stuff. He'd say, Scott, be happy. You're in a job that you're not sending people out to battle. People aren't going to die because of the decisions you're making. Lighten up. And so I've also, we're not cleaning out porta potties or repairing vacuum cleaners. When I first got out of school, I repaired vacuum cleaners. You wouldn't believe the stuff people try and vacuum up. So there's some really bad jobs out there. We get to do cool work. We get to come to conferences, get taken to places to listen to bands and drink beer and stuff like that. So be happy in your work. It's stressful, but we've got a real blessing in the kind of work we do. All right, opening thoughts. I just love mind map, so that's just why architectural jazz, and let's talk about it.
So, does anybody have any preconceived notions of why we're talking about jazz? I imagine the room will just go silent if I ask, so I'll just fill it in. But the idea is that in jazz, it's really a nice model of what we should aspire to as a team. And the way that jazz works, I found out some interesting stuff when I was looking at how our teams work and how we can make them better. And like I said, part of my job was to go to other industries and steal ideas about what we could transfer over. And there in Orlando, there was a conference, and it was about software development and agile methodologies and Scrum. I don't know how many of you guys have heard of any of that stuff, but man, that is just, it's a really rich environment to steal ideas and methodologies. You should definitely look into that. But at the conference, there was a guy by the name of Adrian Cho, and he was talking about how jazz, he's a musician as well, and how jazz relates to teams so well. And what I wanted to express here is some of what he was saying, he was relating it to software development, but in the same way, it relates to our teams. So, we talk a lot about project execution plans and stuff of that nature, but there's a lot of times when we don't do a project execution. Who here does not do one every project? Okay. And how does your project get done? If you don't have a plan, how does it get done? It just gets done, right? Well, we've all heard about jam sessions, right? When people get together with a bunch of guitars, they sit down and they just start playing. There's no plan, but yet they still get some nice, sweet music, right? Jazz, in some cases, is often the same kind of scenario. People will come together and they'll just begin to play, and they'll just start making this harmonious music. And that's something to aspire to. But there's a difference between what they do and what we do. What they do is they have trust. They have empathy. They're ready to back up the person next to them. Those are all factors that make the sound come out perfect. And if we can do that in our teams at work, it'll be so much better. Our projects will hum and make sweet sound if we can do just that. So, just like our projects, you know, there's a bit of the same thing every time, right? With just a little bit of difference. Jazz is the same scenario. It's almost the same sound, but when each person takes over, they make it their own. And the other thing is in jazz, is you'll notice that each member of the band actually takes the forward lead on creating the music at certain points. And the same thing's true in our teams. Each of us plays a role in the band, just like they do in jazz. Your role is different from the next guy, but at the same time, the people beside you are going to back you up no matter what it is that you do, and they allow you to lead. So for the leaders in the room, take heart that when you're leading, you want to rely and let people do what they do best. You know, you don't want to come in and tell them what to do every time. You might want to actually just stand back and allow them to flourish and back them up, and you might just achieve sweet music.
Cool. There's one point I'd make to that is that people have to know what they're doing. So knowing your tool is important. If you can't play the sax, you can't play the bass, it's not going to be pretty. So that's why we come here, right? All right. So now we're going to do a little mock therapy session. So Dr. Derek here is the psychiatrist, and I'm coming in after a rough week at the office.
How's it going, Scott?
Oh man, Derek, I gotta tell you, we've been working on this project. We hired this new engineering group, Kohachi Peterson, you may have heard them. These guys, they sell themselves as all-inclusive. You know, they do the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection. I got their model yesterday. A light on top of a diffuser, on top of a sprinkler head, and a security camera to boot, right? They're working in the same office. You think those guys talk? It's crazy. And then, I think they're incompetent, and they don't know what they're doing. I mean, it's got to be clear. We don't want this stuff to line up. And then, you know, I trust them to do their job, and they don't do it. And then, his interior designer, she's great, picks out. I mean, we do a lot of hospitality work, and they're awesome at what they do. She went to this lunch and learn. They gave her lobster rolls. You know what we get at lunch and learn as architects? Like Panera sandwiches. It's just awful. And they're getting lobster rolls, wines, and cheese. Well, they sold them once through large format bathroom tile. It's beautiful. Now she wants me to move my walls in my bathroom to fit this format, huge tile. And we've already issued drawings. Oh man. And then, of course, the owner's not going to pay us any more money, wants it quicker. And then our civil engineer, he's gone AWOL. You know, he starts the project before we even have a building. Now we've got a building, you know, ADA works, it's just a mess.
Tell me about the communication, though, that you have with these people, and how does that go?
You know, I just upload my Revit model, and they download it and supposed to do their job.
Wow. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Yeah. Do we have any other takers that want to come up here and vent for a
Talk
minute?
to Dr. Derek.
Come on, I need a volunteer. Who wants to come and vent?
Who's got a
Got a
good
contractor in the
frustration
room.
story. Preferably an engineer talking about an architect would be nice.
Yes. Who's the engineer in the room? Raise your hand.
Come on, I know you can say some stuff about the
Come on up
architect.
here. Have a seat. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Tim Hazel. I'm a recovering structural engineer.
Recovering structural engineer. So tell me about your woes, sir.
You know, always changing.
What's changing?
Everything. You know, at the last moment. I mean, I need time to design it. I need time to have my team work on everything. You know, I mean, they're changing. They went from like a 2x4 bay system to like, I don't know. All of a sudden, it's a mansion.
Who's they?
You know, yeah.
Who's the
I can't name them.
Yeah.
Architects.
Wow. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else need to vent? So
Come on, this is your opportunity to get it out there.
charge.
I'll walk around with the mic. I'll come to you. No takers.
Alright. Alright. So is there anything valid about my stressor? I'm sorry, what was your name?
Timon.
Tim. There's some valid concerns there? Our decisions and lack of communication cause stress, definitely. Did you catch any underlying causes of these issues? Change. Expectations.
Lack of empathy.
Yeah, no.
Or understanding for what they're dealing with. So when you think about those problems, you know that he's got an owner that's writing him to make these changes for free.
At
Right?
the last moment. Because the owner never gives them the information early.
But does that actually run through your head, though, when you're sitting there tussling him to work?
Just when we're in person.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot. And after I've reminded us that the real estate agent's going to get paid 3 or 4 times as much as we are every time they resell the property. All right. So we're going to move on and talk about some things that are motivators and demotivators. I'll share a couple, and then Derek can take over. I do a lot of Revit training, and there's nothing that demotivates me more than when somebody asks me, well, what's in it for me? Why should I learn this? I just don't want to talk to that person. Because they're only in it for their advancement. There's, and then, but a motivator for me is I love to help people who know what they want to do, but don't yet know how, and I know that I can help them use the software. So that's a couple for me.
I'd like to hear from you guys. Just shout out a couple real quick about what motivates you.
Designing in 3D.
Designing in 3D makes you happy. Gets you fired up. Come on, 2 more. Come on,
The
guys.
challenge.
The challenge. Challenges. Ooh. Just the challenge alone does that, right? Very cool. Happy clients. What was the other one I heard? Problem solving. This all sounds like Maslow's hierarchy of needs to me. Who knows what Maslow's hierarchy of needs are? If you don't, you want to go look that up, because that's a big, crucial part to all of this. So, what motivates me? What motivates me, I found over the years, is being on a team. I love working with people. I feel it's a little stressful when I work alone, because I feel the burden of all the weight on my shoulders alone. And when I'm on a team, there's this shared burden. But that's also a twofold thing, because if you work on a team with a bunch of lazy people, you really haven't accomplished anything. So you got to work on a team with a bunch of badasses. So at work, I wanted to go ahead and create a team of people that would really love what they did and wanted to accomplish great things. And to do that, I began looking at what are the things out there that really go well in other teams that we could steal those ideas and transplant them into what we do in architecture and design. And somewhere along that way, I was Googling everything, and long story short, I came to the conclusion that I can't be the first person to have done this, right? There's plenty of people that have done this. So my first search on Google, I hit this. And Richard Banfield, here on the left, is a UX UI designer up in Boston, and they do some pretty amazing things. But the neat thing was his blog post, Special Forces as a Model for Design Teams. He had done that very thing. He went out and found a highly effective team, probably one of the most highly effective teams there is out there. And he started to transfer the things that he learned from the Navy SEALs to his practice. And he was able to accomplish really great things. So that really kicked me off in a direction to begin to look at other avenues. And to be honest, I got stuck on the Navy SEALs there for a little while, probably for the better part of a year. And I'm a big reader, and one of the things that I read about was there was a book called Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. Highly recommend the book. And what it talks about in being happy and stuff like that, and those things that challenge us, and when we learn, we're motivated to drive forward and stuff. Well, to do that, you got to go talk to subject matter experts, So in the book, he talks about come down and sit down with somebody that knows what they're talking about, and talk to them about the ideas that you can steal, So what I did was I got on LinkedIn and I started stalking Navy SEALs in the Orlando area. And I know that's a dangerous thing, right? So one of the ones that I came across that would actually sit down and talk to me was this gentleman here, Richard Graham. He was a sniper and a 7-year Navy SEAL who suffered some injuries that caused him to move away from that. And one of the major questions that I had for him was, one of the things that make them really great at what they do is that they have a lot on the line. Their lives depend on, success. How do you transfer that same kind of energy to what we do? So when I asked him this question, his response was pretty startling to me. I just hadn't thought of it. And he said, it has to do with the peer group. If you make somebody look good in front of their peers, that is probably the most powerful thing you can do in the corporate environment to make somebody feel engaged and give them the drive to move forward. Because if you praise them in front of everybody for something that they've done, I mean, they're just going to launch into more challenges and driving forward. He had a couple other things to say. One of the things he had to say was, don't put short-timers on jobs, just right there at the end. Don't go crown them in there. They're not psychologically invested in the job. You know, if they're not invested, what are they going to do? They're going to get in there and muck with it, and then they're going to leave. Just don't do it. It's not good practice. The other thing he had to say was, make sure that you plan to win and have a future goal set out there. Because in your mind, you want to be part of something bigger than yourself. So give them something to reach towards. And when you're thinking about the end and your goal and what it's going to look like when you're done, one of the things that you can do is you can try to use pool planning. Who knows what pool planning is? Okay, for those that don't know what pool planning is, this is you'll see it done a million different ways from Sunday, and you can go on the internet and find how to do it and all the wonderful things about it. But what they don't talk about a lot is the psychology behind pool planning and why it works. Pool planning works because it starts with the very last thing in mind and you work backwards. Well, the reason that that's important is that's actually how your mind works. Who heard of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP? Okay, so in NLP, they talk about the discovery of memories. And in psychology, they also talk about memories. And the way that they get to memories is they walk you backwards and reconstruct a memory. Because a memory is not a static thing that's like a video file that's stored in your brain. You just got to find the path to get it and hit play. It's actually individual pieces spread out everywhere that they reconstruct. And our jobs and the work path that we have is the same thing. We don't have a static view of what it is that we have to do. We've got to work backwards, one piece at a time. So you start with printing, what do you got to do to print, so on and so forth, all the way back.
Well, and what's really important about this, and one of the reasons I asked Derek to teach this class, was we were at BIM Forum in Orlando, one of the events James Vanderjagt ran, and there was a pool planning class there, and it was so collaborative. You had somebody pretending to be the owner, someone pretending to be the architect, somebody pretending to be the engineers, and so you got to empathize. So there's something really collaborative about that.
Does anybody recognize this gentleman? Or this little patch right here? No? This gentleman is Robert O'Neill. So I got blessed again a couple years back, and there was a ICSC conference, and another Navy SEAL came down to speak. So I got a ticket and went down and talked to him. And some of you probably heard about the guy that shot bin Laden. That would be him. And that was pretty cool to find out after I'd already met him. But being a Navy SEAL, one of the things that they do with the work that they do, you know, they arrive in places and things are never going well. They always have the bad card dealt to them, no matter what it is. I mean, they come in and things are always crazy. I know we think things are crazy, but they really have some crazy stuff going on. And he said the number one thing that made him most successful as a SEAL was surprisingly his people skills. Not being a gunfighter, none of the other things. It was his people skills. When they would pull up on a beach and people would already be there than when they weren't supposed to be, and he had to take civilians and tell them, give them a story or coax them away or calm people down and move people around, he said the number one thing was people skills. The other thing that he had to say was people often get overwhelmed. Psychologically, you know, I talked about it, you know, the reason I like being in a team is there's a large burden associated with working alone. And there's a large burden when you think about all the tasks that you have to accomplish. And you're just like, man, how am I ever going to get all that done? And if you've ever talked to a Navy SEAL or read any of the books, one of the things that they always talk about is the psychological aspect of how they get through stuff like their boot camp and buds and stuff. And how they do it is they only focus on the next object of pain. They live in what they call a 3-foot world, and that comes from when they learn how to do rock climbing. Their only concern is how do they get to the next rock hole. It's not about how you get to the top, because you can't see that far, you don't know what's there, it's just an ambiguity. So, focus on your 3-foot world and get that done, and then you move on to the next thing. We're going to talk later, if we get a chance, about tools, and what you saw there was Trello, and that's a tool that creates lists, and that'll help you. Azraf actually talked about creating lists and marking them off. That's a great tool for that. He also had one other point that he made when he was telling me stories about what it is that they did. it really registered with me, some of the stuff that we were doing. This is one of the teams that I told you we learned to work together and create this little team that was doing awesome things. He told me that they were in a gunfight once, and their sniper was up above and was looking down and was able to tell who everybody was just by their movements. It's dark, they're in night vision, all this other stuff, and that's pretty impressive, just knowing their team. And he was talking about the nonverbal communication amongst everything, and it just hit for me, and that's when I started to understand, because it wasn't just one team that I was working with. We started to grow it and try to do other teams that had these methodologies to work together and do great things. So, running out of breath. No, I'm good. When he talked about nonverbal communications, I was having problems when I would go to a new team and some of the same stuff just wouldn't work. And I'm like, well, what is this? And I came to this realization that there's 3 stages of teams. So psychologically, you've got to take into account that when you train in a new team, when you bring them in and you're doing something new with somebody, there's uncertainty. And when there's uncertainty, it's both a blessing and a curse. Because when things are uncertain, people are open to new ideas, so you can teach them, but they're also very quiet. They're also very timid. They're also willing to just sit back and listen, and there's not a lot of communication, right? So there's no communication, and there's a lot of uncertainty. You work together for a little while, you get to stage 2. And in stage 2, you're very confident that you understand the system now, and you understand who the people are. So what you do is you begin to over-communicate. It might be a lot of emails, it might be a whole lot of conversations, it might be a lot of talking going on. That isn't a necessary thing. We thought that was the pinnacle. We thought we had hit it when we got to the point where everybody was talking to everybody all the time about everything. We thought that was great. But then I learned that the nonverbal communication is what you actually want to aspire to. A place where when you're on a team, you already know what the other person's going to do. You don't have to think about it. You just know it. There doesn't have to be any communication. So it's not a lack of communication. It's a lack of communication because you already have this anticipatory knowledge about what it is that they're about to do and accomplish. And that's just, it's highly important. So once you understand that there's 3 phases of teams, when you go into a new team or an existing team and they get a new team member, you have to understand, if you're leading the team, if you're going into a team that's reached nonverbal communication and they get a new player, that new player is going to suffer because they don't talk. There's no communication. You have to make sure as a leader that you go in and let them understand that, guys, we've got to go back to stage 1 or stage 2. So just be cognizant of when you're dealing with teams, how that works. Another thing, the great thing about being on a team is you belong to something. You're part of something bigger than yourself. Name me your favorite sports team. Somebody. Who? The Dodgers. So when the Dodgers win, right, what is it that you said? We won, right? When the Dodgers lose, they lost. All of a sudden, you're not associating with them, right? But when they're winning, you want to associate with them. And when they're losing, you want to disassociate. So bringing people on board the teams can be a very uncertain time for people. So one of the things that you might want to do is create an environment where they can be both belonging to something and anonymous at the same time. So one of the things we did at Coachew Peterson is we started to review everything that we have, because just the difference between AutoCAD and Revit and the old ways and new ways. And we were questioning things. We were questioning who the heck uses drawing? Who actually fills that out? And does any one person actually do a whole sheet anymore? You know, so we were like, do we even need that? And then we started thinking about this idea of teams. And let the teams create a logo and a name and stuff like that. And we thought that would bring engagement. And with engagement comes a better product, more productivity, up to 12%, some studies say. So it can be a big deal. So try to find a way that people can be part of a team, because it lets them be both a part of it and disassociated, depending on the circumstances. So psychologically, people need to know that what they do matters. Who has kids? All right, when your kids bring home their work from school, what is it that you do? It goes on the fridge. Why does it go on the fridge? You're showing them that what they did matters, you know? On the far right, so this slide was inspired by a guy by the name of Charlie Kim from NextGen, a really revolutionary company. They do the same thing where they go out and steal ideas from other companies, bring them in. It's really revolutionary stuff you should check out. But he went into his daughter's school and was going down the elementary school hallway and saw all these pictures on the wall. And he had just built this nice building for his new company and paid all this money for motivational posters, only to find out that when he walked in there, he goes, oh my gosh, all I need to do is hang up the work that we do day in and day out to provide a sense of belonging, esteem, show off people's work. The other thing that they found was it's actually a form of communication. And those of us in bigger companies, if you walk down the hallway or walk past somebody's thing and you see what's on their wall, you may not have known what they were working on. And that might inspire you to ask a question. So it actually is a little deeper than that.
Yeah, we kind of, back in our architecture department, which is no longer an architecture department because we have construction project managers sitting there as well, but we just renovated. We have a long wall that we hang all our bicycles on, and we also have pin-up space for projects that are, that are in construction in one form or another, stuff that's on the boards, and people are constantly just pinning up whatever they did that day. So we just brought we haven't been printing anything. Maybe this isn't green, but we decided we're going to buy a nice printer. It has color output, and when you've done something cool, you just hit print and you stick that thing on the wall. It's just like being a kindergartner, right?
Let me say this too. On time, I'm running a little long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blast through this last part to get the Scott stuff. But in the handout, everything is spelled out very well. So if you want it, you can go in there and get it. Job numbers, who can remember them? Nobody. You can remember job numbers?
Except the big project.
Yeah. So we've all seen the SPCA commercials, right? When it comes on, you get the little sad face, and they tell you, oh, well, this is Puddles. Puddles was left at a foreclosure, and he almost died of starvation until we found him. You know why they do that? And they don't come on TV and go, there's hundreds of dogs that need your help, give us your money. Because nobody remembers numbers, and you can't associate the numbers. But you can associate to a name. You can associate to a face. So think about that. When you guys go into your kickoff meetings, don't just talk about job numbers. Talk about, what is this job? What is its story? Give it a name. Another way to connect is, and we talked about belonging before, Dr. Turner, he is a radiologist, and they commonly look at all your x-rays. He started to think about, he got bored is what he did. He got really bored looking at this stuff all day. They actually don't interact with patients. All they do is look at the actual x-rays. And that's to give them this objective point of view when they go to do stuff. But nonetheless, he started thinking about he needed to engage more, so he gave each patient the time. So he started envisioning that every x-ray was an x-ray of his father, and that he needed to take the same care he would with his father with every x-ray. And then that led to his next thought, where he went and took a picture, you can see it over on the left, of the actual patients and put them on the x-rays. And putting that picture on the x-rays, he found that over time, his reports were longer. Imagine that. So, give people a name, give them a face, and then go into some specifics, For the PMs in the room, you guys get on the phone and you talk to these people all the time. The people that do the drawings and build these buildings and design them, they don't get to do that. They don't know who they're working for. So if the guy's a butthole on the phone, tell your team that. They can actually connect with somebody that's that. And then they'll start phrasing and doing things in a way that allow them to know ahead of time what's going on. And if they're nice and kind, do the same. Another book that I stole some great ideas from, Turn the Ship Around, David Marquette. CEO of a submarine, got the opportunity to go and run this awesome submarine because he had done a really good job in his career. And at the last second, they said, you're so good, we're going to send you to the worst one in the fleet, and you're going to flip them around and make them the best. And he goes, you get it. So his whole career, he thought went down the toilet. He showed up at the new sub and didn't know anything about it. It was a different class of submarine. And he had to learn everything about the sub, but he couldn't. He didn't have the time to figure that out. He didn't have the years of experience that all these people did. So he had to actually move the authority to the information. And he had to give control and not come in and take control. And that was a big thing. My dad told me a story, he's a contractor, about being on the job site. And I always busted my dad's chops about when you're on the job site, how come it is you just stand around and don't do anything all day, Dad? I mean, I understand you're the owner and you can do that, but I mean, you can be more productive. And he told me the difference between profit and loss are the eyes of the boss. If you're watching your people, they'll work. And now I understand that it's just not so true. I mean, if your people will only work because you're staring at them, You got a motivation problem you're dealing with there. So, doing this, he had to overcome this. So he created this whole model that he calls the I intend to model. So what he did was, because they were the subject matter experts, and he was the CO there to make the go, no-go decision, he would ask them to state what it is that they think needs to be done, and then they would respond with, I intend to do this. Now, if I came over to one of you guys as a project manager and said, I need you to do this, and I want you, this is how I want it done. That's not really going to motivate you a lot. But if you tell me what it is that you want to do to solve the problem, that allows you to problem solve, show off your skills. It allows me to evaluate what it is that you know. So now I have a better idea of who you are, where you're at, and what training you might need. All kinds of things. So you come back and say, I intend to do X. And then you, as the leader, would turn around and say, that sounds like a great idea. Tell me why it is that you think that that's a great idea. Get more insight. So one, you get to probe deeper into what it is they're understanding. And two, you're actually training your replacement, which is what we're all really here to do. That way that the pipeline for the customer or our client or our companies can move forward.
Take a breath.
I'm trying to keep pace, yeah, go.
Some of you may have heard of Dr. James Dobson. He's a child psychologist, and he found a study. They studied kids on playgrounds, and the playgrounds were fenced. And they found that kids thrived within these boundaries. And then what they did is they took away the fences. And what they found out was kids then moved, and they wouldn't play to the extent of the playground anymore. They'd just stay in the middle. And so, taking that to architecture and our work, you have to establish boundaries. And when there are clear boundaries established, that motivates people to thrive within those boundaries. We have things that we have to work within. So figure out what those are, set your team's boundaries, and then let them run, and then protect your team is what the rest of that is. You want to talk about these or
blowing through them really quickly. So self-actualization, we talked about it, having a challenge, being engaged, and all that stuff. Gallup, actually, go back one for me. Gallup actually does a poll every year, and it's actually live every day. They have these questions that go out to people. Only 30% of people year over year are physically engaged at work. The other half there in the middle, they don't really care. The people in the black are actually working against you. You may have 10, 15% of the people that are upset, and they want to upset everybody else just because they're upset. So, it's really important that you get that engagement and move forward. Another thing to be motivated in a team is to have a relationship. Well, you can't have a relationship with 150 people and understand all the idiosyncrasies with all these people. Your team size makes a big, big difference. If you have teams over 9 people, studies have shown that productivity just tanks after you hit over 9 people. The optimum is, they say, 3 to 9. We found 5 to 7 really works well for us.
Oh, can we go back real quick?
Say again?
Can you go back one quick?
This one. Got it.
Challenges. Major point I want to make here, make sure you're challenging your people. Ask them what it is that they want to do. You don't even have to come up with a challenge. Just say, hey guys, what is it specifically that you want to learn? And then you say, okay, you want to learn that. Well, I know somebody that knows that on the team. Have that person teach that person. That's going to give the person that's teaching them a sense of, man, I must really be doing something right if I'm the one teaching. And then the other person's actually learning and growing. And that challenge of learning and moving forward. Go back one more. When you do this, it does not have to be complicated. When we talked about those that have kids, if you make a kid a line leader, what does he do? He runs home to his mom, he tells them about it, it's the most exciting freaking thing of the day. How hard is it to make people line leaders at work? Give them small challenges that they can handle. And make sure that you give them challenges that are achievable. Move back. All right.
Okay. So, thanks, Derek. He's talked about a lot of people that have been successful and Jazz and team. I'm going to talk about team psychology and get into some theories behind it and different things like that. So just how does psychology play a part of creating a successful team? This is our architecture team. Snapchat, free, have some fun with it. All right, so there's 4 main things that I'm going to talk about. You need to know your team. You need to build your team. You need to have team communication, reward your team, and correct your team. And I'm going to go through some of these things, not all of them. You can always come back to this PowerPoint. But one of the most important things about knowing your team is knowing what they're not good at and making sure they know it's okay to not be good at it. But we got to know what you're not good at so we can supplement it, right? So we're going to talk about personality types first. All right, so this is kind of cool. These are the Chinese symbols for understanding and team or group. So let's talk about personality types. All right, so have anyone ever seen these different number letters, Myers-Briggs stuff? In your handout, you can find out all about, I think her name was Julie Myers, who took Carl Jung's work and came up with these different personality traits. Basically, we're all wired one way or another, and your degree of wiredness is relative to who you are. So I'm going to crank into what seems like this could happen. All right, so we want to find out how each person's wired. All right, so these are all these different letters. What do they all mean? I'm going to go through each of what an E is, what an I is, all the different letters, and how we use them in our office. All right, so personality types. These are what a quote architect is, an INTJ. We know that's not true. People are all different personality types. So what are these letters and how do we get to them? So what energizes you? And you don't need to take a test to figure this out, but there are tests, and I'm going to give you some examples that will help you get to these answers. What energizes you is the question you ask to determine whether you're an extroverted individual or an introverted individual. Do you get charged up if you're in a group, out in a social environment? Or do you get charged up when you're at home reading a book, studying on your own? If the latter, you're more likely an introversion, the first, extroverted. And then the next thing you want to ask yourself is, how do I gather information? Am I a guy that looks to the past and what I know, details, what's concrete, what can I hold on to? Or do you use more of a sixth sense? And I'll go through each of these in a little more detail, but basically, big picture, sensing person is what, from facts and details, and intuition, which you'll see is an N, not an I, is more of a sixth sense. And then how do you make decisions? Do you make them objectively? Then you get labeled as a T, a thinking. Or are you subjective in the way that you make decisions? Then you're a feeling, F. And then how do you orient your life? This is how you structure your time. So vacations, we'll talk about that. That's a J. Or if you're more flexible, P. So let's get into it. All right, so what energizes you? Extroverts, so they gain energy from being around others. We talked about that. Introverts gain energy from being alone. This affects how you're going to communicate with someone once you realize that they're extroverted or introverted. Phone calls work great with an extroverted person. You're going to lose a lot of time because you're going to talk and chat, but that's how they'll prefer to communicate. An introverted person probably wants an email. They can have time to think, read on it alone, and figure out how to respond. Extroverts like to work in teams. Introverts work better alone. There's some really I'll save for later. Extroverts are pretty good speakers. They don't mind getting in front of a crowd. I'm an extrovert. I can talk a lot, and so that's why I run out of time. Introverts tend to be good writers, and you can read the rest. So let's see. Important thing to realize about E's and I's are extroverted people are after thinkers. They talk and talk and talk to create the thought that they want to convey. So it's kind of like they're throwing up on you until they get to where they figured out what it is they really want to say. An introvert's going to be quiet. They're going to be listening, and they're what they call forethinkers. They're not going to speak until they've thought through what it is they want to share. This is really, really important to know. So, tip if you're in a group with extroverts and introverts, you can let extroverted people jump in, but you've got to kind of rein them in, because they'll take all your time, and you'll never get to hear from the introverted person, and you need to hear from the introverted person, because that person has thought through probably what the right answer is. And unfortunately, in our culture, the person who talks the loudest usually wins. So you want to encourage their enthusiasm and give an introverted person time to make decisions. listening to an introverted person. We all need to learn to listen better, but this is really crucial when listening to an introvert. When an introvert finally does speak in a group, if you interrupt them, you cut them off, and they won't speak again. Now, there's levels of the spectrum. You're neither all introvert or all extrovert, but it's really important to draw out something from an introvert and then don't interrupt them. We as extroverts, when I'm listening to someone speak, I'm listening to rebut, or I'm listening to figure out what I'm going to say next. I'm not listening to understand. You need to listen to understand what you're talking to. Anyone, really, but especially introverts. All right, so communication styles for sensing and intuition. So this was how you gather information. And these two butt heads the most in a project team. A sensing person is all about details, what they know works in the past, and rules. They like rules. An intuitive person is much more big picture. They're going to be 10,000 feet. Intuitive people are SketchUp users. Sensors are Revit users. That's very broad, probably not totally accurate, but a hilarious example. I work with a great architect, Eric, and masonry dimensions are like really important to me. There's a rule there, right? If it's even, if it, you know, it's 4'8", or it's 4 foot, or it's 5, if it's an odd number, it's 5'4", and so and he's like, I want this column on the corner to have a 1-inch bump out. And I'm like, you can't just bump it out an inch. It doesn't work. He's in conceptual design. He sketched his SketchUp model. He's got his little brick bump 1 inch, and I can't move forward because I'm a sensing guy, and I know that doesn't work. So he and I need to learn to work together. So some positives and negatives of sensors. We are really resourceful, determined, practical, down to earth. We have a talent for getting things done, make decisions quickly. If we have facts in the past experience, we can come off as aggressive and competitive. And we're this little Fitbit. We do these competitions work. I want to win. I want the most steps. That's a sensing person. They can be perceived as not caring also, which isn't necessarily true. So there's some negatives. They're impatient. And we don't think about the long-term consequences. So you need to be teamed up with an intuitive person who's looking at the big picture and looking, like I always say, I'll get into a Revit model and I'll start cranking on something and I'll get it all detailed. And he might change that column detail. I've got 3D views of it. I've got it all nailed down. And it was just a thought to him. And it's going to be gone the next day. So I need someone big picture working with me to direct where I focus my detailed thinking. So when you praise a sensing person, they like to know that the details they worked on matter. So praise specific behaviors for a sensing person. When you have an intuitive person, I kind of already talked about their positives, visionary. They can seem absent-minded and they avoid details. So you need to know about this when you are talking with someone. If I go and talk to Eric about the column bump in 1-inch number, he doesn't want to talk to me about that. He doesn't care. He's looking at the big picture. So they may come across arrogant, which is a trick, and they're going to procrastinate too. When praising an intuitive person, this is talk about how their work affects the big picture. The productivity of the team's a good example, or that their work's going to influence the culture of the school you're working on, whatever it is. So we need both types of people on a project. So the forms at the top, this is a project we're doing at the University of Virgin Islands, and we were comparing two schemes. One was a rectilinear bar scheme to solve the problem, and one was this curvilinear solution. The N person on the team obviously created the curve forms. The person who was more sensing came up with the complications due to the curve scheme. Pointed out that we're going to need curve forms. We're going to take all our form work. It's going to cost more money. So you need both of these, and it's very, very important that you understand the differences between these two types of people so that you can figure out how to communicate and get them both involved in the project. The next two are how do we make decisions? So thinking people, T's versus F's. Thinking people love to have, they're going to be the people that make a decision based on the code book. What do the rules tell me? What are these things? that I know need to happen. A feeling person is much more about the people. So they're going to be, does the space accomplish the needs of the people who are going to use it? Does it feel right? It's almost that simple. It's kind of form versus function. Let's see. So some positives on thinkers. They're great analytical people. One thing you need to know about thinkers is they may hurt others' feelings because they'll present you with, you can't do that because the code tells you you can't do it. And so a thinking person needs to understand that a feeling person is going to be concerned about how the team feels and how the project is moving forward. So if you know that about yourself, you can correct it and make sure you come off in a way that's not dismissive to a feeler. Let's see. So feelers, a negative thing is they tend to over-personalize situations and their relationships can cloud judgments. These are the people that are really good at sensing needs in the room, like someone doesn't have a water. They're going to make sure everyone has a water at the team meeting and stuff like that. So again, you need all of these people to make up your team. Yes. All right, lastly, the last communication style or personality traits is judging or perceiving. So judging people love schedules. They absolutely love to put schedules together and know when things are going to get done. A perceiving person wants to start a job and see where it goes. To get a perceiving person to commit to a deadline is really tough. So you gotta watch that person. But at the same time, a judging person is going to get really focused. Bottom line is you need both people. Let's see if I've got anything super cool about that. That's good. Oh, it's good to know. A perceiving person wants the story behind the job. They don't just want to do the job. A judging person is very task-oriented, just getting the next stuff done. A perceiving person really wants to know the reason why we're doing the job. A really fun example of this, how many people have taken a family vacation? Are you getting a sense that you or your wife might be different in some way? Like, some people take a vacation and they plan out, they're going to be at this place, at this time, on this date, and you can call me at the room because I want to be there. A perceiving person just wants to hit the road, pick a direction, and let's see what spontaneously happens. So, you may say some are more fun than others. All right. So, bottom line is understanding how each team member communicates is critical to your project success. You want to know how does each team member give information and how do they want to receive information. If you can find that about your team, you can communicate successfully. So once you've found out what numbers you are, there's something called the communication wheel. And this was developed by a guy named Henry L. Thompson. So like Ashley said, if you borrow from a lot of people, you're a researcher. If you take from one, you're a thief. So yes, I'm a thief. So the closer two people are, so an extroverted, sensing, thinking, perceiving person can get along and communicate really easily with an extroverted, sensing, feeling, perceiving person, because they're really close on that spectrum. Two people across the aisle from each other, an ENFP, an extroverted, intuiting, feeling, perceiving person is going to have a lot of trouble talking with the person across the way. So this is a tool you can use. I'm going to show you, there's a number of personality tests that you can go online and take. This was the one that I found that I liked the best. When I was a kid and in trouble and had to get sent to psychiatrists, they gave me the Myers-Briggs test, and all of these tests are based on those and they're pared down. So like this one's only 64 questions. If you take a full-blown, go to a psychiatrist and you get the full-blown thing, it's going to be like 150 questions. Do you like horses? Do you like it? They're weird questions. And somehow, from all those questions they ask, they come up with your personality traits. And it is almost science. These things are very reliable. what's important, and the reason I like this one is it gives you the percentages of each. So this is mine after I took it in ESFJ. I'm an extrovert, 62%, so that's really high scoring extrovert. I'm far on the E scale. Sensing, I'm only 6%, so I'm really close to between sensing and intuitive. So I can go both ways. I have a slight preference for feeling overthinking. So again, I'm an F, but I can empathize with a T because I'm really am concerned with how everyone's feeling. I look around the room and I look at people's faces and I know if they're feeling good about this project. But at the same time, I'm a code guy. I want to do it by the book. So these aren't either or. They certainly can be both. And then judging and perceiving, I'm definitely, I would imagine that you could slide that scale farther over than 22%, but whatever the questions they chose put me on the judging scale, which I agree with. So anyway, take these tests, we've added links, and have your team members take them and then compare those. Another one was 16 personalities. It's kind of interesting because they kind of put a type of person with each of them. And what I don't like about that is you can be, there are big lawyers of all the different mixes. It's not that it's one or the other, so just take that for a grain of salt. Some of them gauge things a little different. This one was interesting. It says I'm quite neurotic, which is true. Not sure where to go with that. So pros and cons, they shed light on your traits. Some tests are better than the others. You really want to bring a professional in if you want to get accurate. One time I took it and you can see that I was really close. Remember, I was feeling, thinking really close, so this one put me as an ESFP instead of ESFJ. So anyway, that's me. I'm Marilyn Monroe up here entertaining you guys. This one, Gary Smalley, it's kind of interesting. More for relationships with your spouse and kids, but it rates you on, uses animals as I'm a beaver, and then a bit of an otter, and a golden retriever, and a lion. My wife is all lion, so people are it's scary. But this one's a fun one to do with your family. And then these are communication styles testing. So the personality traits inform the communication styles. So all different, people have made an incredible business of putting these communications tests together. Like, did you ever go to school with communications majors? You wonder, what are these people doing? You know, what is their product? Well, it's packaging this stuff up and making money going to companies and teaching us how to communicate. But I believe they do actually have a role. So different tests will put you on these scales. This I want to stop. So the test we use at Beck comes back with colors, and you'll see a driver, or red is up here to the right, and that's a task-oriented person who wants to tell and direct people. So that's probably going to be a CEO type, just a hardcore manager, leader, driver, drives the business. Then if you move down to the yellow, you've got someone who's more expressive. They want to tell, they want to express their feelings, but they also are people skills, so they probably have more of the feeling in them. Then you work your way around the blue person, they're asking, listen, and have people skills. So they're not going to get anything done, but people are going to like them a lot. And then analytical, that's, you know, you're asking what you want, the data, you want the data, you want the data, and then you're task and results oriented. So you're probably going to be the person that the driver, you make the driver look really good if you're an analytical person pulled up with the driver. So, and I'm just taking some snapshots. All the different tests will produce something very similar to this and give you some feedback. So this is the results of, we hire a company called Academic Leadership to come in, and we do this with our in-house teams, and then when we have a big $25 million or more project, we hire them to come in, and we bring our subcontractors in, the whole team. We're not talking just in-house. And we have a whole day session where we run through the test. Actually, he sends out the link for the testing the day before, and you come back and you get these charts here that show. So up in the upper left-hand corner there, you can see Scott Brown. That's me. My preferred style of communication. This middle, they come up with your expectations. How do you expect to be communicated from? And then my instinctive needs, those are, if I'm stressed, what am I going to fall back into? So if we're in a deadline situation, my team members can know something about me. They know if they're going to come to me, I'm going to be glued here, inner focused, seeking info and understanding. Like my boss in the lower right, Brian Wilson, he's all red. He and I are opposites. And if we didn't do this test, we would not work well together. But because we've done it, a red person is action-oriented and goal-setter. He just wants to move, and get things done. He's going to make decisions really quick, where I'm going to need all the info and understanding before I make a decision. So together, I can stop him from making rash decisions. And he knows that if he asks me to make a decision, he better give me enough information for me to be able to make that decision from. And because of this testing, we work really well together. So it's pretty neat. And then they give us really detailed information of each one of our team members, and you can read through this, but you can see so for Brian here, he's my boss. Avoid lengthy verbal explanations and telling Brian how to do things. So I want to say, Brian, look, we can't make this decision now because we need to do this. Bad idea. I need to figure out with my team what the decision needs to be and go to Brian and say, I think we need to move forward this way, and he'll be the champ. Or if I need Brian to help me make a decision, I need to kind of break it down a little bit, and then I know I can go to him and he'll make a call, where I won't make a call unless I know it's going to turn out right. So understand your team members' personality, communication style, and tailor your communication appropriately. So once you know your team, you got to build your team. And this is where it gets fun. Really fun. Beck is a great company to work for, and I hope that each of you take some of this back to your companies to make your companies as fun and exciting to work for as I'm blessed to be part of a team that does these things. That's why I'm teaching this class, because I didn't have this in previous companies. So anyway, some of the ways to build team building events, and like I talked about, we do internal and external team building events. So we'll take all of our engineers and architects and whoever out and drive cars, all kinds of fun stuff. Setting team goals and expectations, a really big one is to set your team members' roles and responsibilities. Clearly define who's to do what. That's kind of those boundaries. People will thrive if they know what's expected of them and have some fun together. So this is kind of cool, project expectations. I'm going to punt out of this real quick, and hopefully I'll be able to get back in. We just started doing this. Before a project starts, we have a project expectation. So we're a construction company in architecture. We don't have in-house engineering, but we bring all of our design assist partners in, and we have them define how success and value is going to be measured on this job. So you bring them in, ask them some questions, and we get back from this a list of how are people going to define success? How are we going to have trust and honesty? How are we going to listen and communicate? Have positive attitudes? How are we going to innovate? Innovation is really big on our projects, so we want to have the whole team think about these things. How are we going to resolve conflicts? We know they're going to happen, so how are we going to deal with them? We do this up front, and then you'll see we make a commitment to come back. So this one was on March 24th, and June 3rd they're going to meet again, so they already did. I don't know how this one went. And go back and see how are we doing. And I highlighted some of these because it's interesting. Once you know people's personality traits, you can go next to these and say, okay, don't do it just because that's the way we always have done it. This is an N person making this statement. You know it's an intuitive person making this statement because the sensing person always wants to do it. The sensing guy, the way I did in my old firm worked really well. I know it works, so I want to do it that way. We're not going to move forward in innovation always doing that. So it's kind of interesting. Once you get a good grasp of your team, you can go through this. So here's a feeling kind of communicate with respect, be positive, encouraging. They want to know the team. Yes, sir.
Is this posted in the data set or a sample of this
Sure, I'll upload it. I've got a lot of handouts that I haven't uploaded to the website as like appendixes, and I can certainly share this with you.
And I have a second question. Do you have any vehicles or mechanisms for the different individual personality types on how to approach building a structure of that team, drawing upon those skill sets? So, for example, let's say I'm thinking or whatever, and then I know that we need to do this, and I need these personality types, so how to build my team best? Well, I may think that people that are the same as me are the best to work with me, so I think that'll be whatever, but helping the individuals of the different types understand and draw upon to build the team of what maybe I do need 10 people that are exactly or very similar to my type for this need, but maybe not. How do I build a team better?
So it's a great question, and there's actually many studies done on it that some teams that start out with like-minded people do really well for a little while, but then they don't do well in the long run because they don't have any innovation happening. So it really is important to assemble your team. It's funny because Derek asked me this. I started out, how do you assemble your team? We don't usually get that choice to assemble the team based on people's personality traits. So if you have, I guess you could.
Versus just reacting to it and understanding each other better.
We've got some more to show. All right, so some team building ideas. We go kayaking. A real good team building idea is to serve together. Find something, a Habitat for Humanity house, a mission project, whatever it is in your community. It helps your firm look good to do something in the community, and when you serve together, you bond together. A lot of stuff Derek was talking about, life and death situations. Hopefully we don't have to do that, but we can go outside our jobs and do something that helps us build a teamwork together. So then we got to reward our teams. And like I said, I work for a really neat company. Money's a great reward, right? We all need to feed our families. So that's a good one. Personalized rewards, time off, thank you note. This note is from the CEO of Beck, and it says, thank you for your hard work across all the regions, for being a champion and resource for Revit technologies, and for being willing to share your knowledge and experience for all of our projects. On behalf of the entire Beck leadership and your regional team, we thank you for your efforts and keep up the great work. And there's a big fat check with that. But he hit on the specifics of what I do. And him knowing the specifics of what I do, I will work for this guy because he's rewarded me knowing that I'm real detail focused, and he provides specifics of what I do that helps. This image on the right, this is a painting by Walt Disney. I got fortunate enough to work on the Gold Oaks Clubhouse in Walt Disney World. It's a $1,000+ square foot, absolute beautiful thing. And this was Walt Disney's vision of it. We took it and made it reality, and so they gave me a painting to hang on the wall. But when in doubt, a handwritten note works wonders. But you got to praise your team. Some ideas for giving feedback. The SIP model: keep it sincere, specific, immediate, and personal. If you have kids, you know you can reinforce bad behaviors and you can reinforce good behaviors. Reward good behavior, you get more of it. As simple as that. And extroverts and introverts, really, really important here. An extrovert, need the center of attention. Say, Scott, you did a great job. Introvert, don't do that. Call them into the office. You really help the project team. Do it one-on-one. It's going to be a lot better. And if you don't know if someone's introvert or extroverted, just write them a note. All right. Communication challenges. So now that we know how to communicate and build a team, now we got to talk about what works and what doesn't work, and what kind of problems we run into. And I would like to hear from you, but let me run through this. So, does anyone have something like this in their firm? A splash screen in Revit that opens up and people try to communicate? Does it work for anyone? $1. Tell me about it.
It's not just a communication platform, but it's informative and tells people how to find information, who to look for, to ask when we have questions, and things like that.
So more just maybe put your team on here, or it's like this said stuff like last link model 2013, and this is 2016, and this one had notes that people were supposed to make, never got done. So anyway, that was just an example of a fail. So email, absolutely the worst form of communication ever created. You can't see my face smile when I'm telling, I need you to do this. It's like I'm telling, you can't see if I'm a nice guy. Groupthink is a real challenge. I want to talk about that more, but I'm not sure I have time. But just know that when you're in a room meeting together, discussing the solution to a problem, people have a tendency to groupthink, which means whatever you say is cool, I'm probably going to agree with you. And then the next person, and the next person, the next person, and you're not going to really get the best solution. So before you have a design workshop, especially for your introvert's sake, set up the agenda, send it out, let people think about what's going to be talked about in the meeting before you actually come to the meeting. Huge, huge. There's generational issues. So email challenges, I won't spend a lot of time on this, but don't reply all. Absolutely mean. You guys get so many emails. There's a great website, Email Ninja. I've got the link here, go to it. Set up rules so your carbon copies go into a box. Another important thing is tell your team members when you check emails. And if you do, and if you're checking them more than 2 times an hour, you're not going to be productive. There is no way you can humanly be productive checking your emails more than 2 times an hour. Your brain cannot switch back to the task at hand if you're constantly getting interrupted. Reread your message before you send it. Make sure it's clear, make sure it communicates what you want it to do. Go back and listen to this TED Talk from Susan Cain. She talks about the power of introverts. It's very important, I think, because she talks about the problems in our school systems. We're going, about 1/3 of the population's introverts, and we're isolating them by everything we're doing, making open office plans, making people work together in groups. It's really damaging, and they have a lot to say. All right, fun stuff. So again, I work for a great company. We went out to this leadership retreat, and they brought Joe Navarro, an ex-FBI agent. This guy's job was to scan a room in the 80s and see who was a spy. And he couldn't come up to you and say, Jasper, do you mean us in harm? Are you trying to? So he's one of the pioneers of body language. And he's got a book out that I highly recommend reading, What Everybody's Saying. So some quick things that I want to point out that I pulled away from his talk. Gravity-defying positions. So if you defy gravity, if you expend blood sugar on someone, they're going to receive that well. So that's why when people walk into a room, you stand up to greet them. That communicates something very important when you expend blood sugar. So this is my son. You don't need to know anything about this situation except he's a happy camper. He's got his cheeks up, smiles, he's defying gravity. He's got his leg up, he's defying gravity. His toes even pointed up in the air. Happy kid. So, and you look at this. Gravity. There is something really bad going on here. It is bad. We don't know what is bad, but we could, if we see someone in our office looking like this, we need to talk to them. Somebody's going to shoot somebody real soon. This is not good. This is my favorite. You ever seen people touch their neck? So, I guess a long time ago, people got attacked by a lot of cats, big cats. And what do? You protect your neck, right? So, why is this important? If you ask a team member, so, are you going to have that model to me on Monday? They go, yeah, I'll get it done. You better ask them more questions. They might not be outright lying to you, but there's more that you need to know. If you see someone touching their neck when you're asking them questions, you've got to ask them some questions. Generational. This is a tough one. We've had class after class, how do we work with millennials? And we just have different communication styles throughout the generations. And I'll just let you guys dig into it more. But I'll talk about some similarities just because it really is important that actually younger folks and older folks have similar reasons for staying with the organization. We all want to know our work's meaningful. We all want to be valued. These things that are written up here. Work with capable people. You want to work with good people. So these are similarities. So when there's a lot of differences, try and look for the similarities. All right, technology, 2 minutes. We got it. So how do we communicate now? So one of our goals was to be human in a tech-filled world. Well, we have to use technology, right? So let's talk about some of them. All right, so we all have these apps. We got Messenger, phone, FaceTime. Do we know when to use them? Which is appropriate for what? A quick text, we're all meeting for lunch. You want to do a message, right? Unless you know someone's expert and you got some time to waste, give them a call. That's not bad. FaceTime. You need to see someone. We use FaceTime on job sites all the time. There is nothing better. I'm virtually co-located. So I need to be brought in and I need to see something because I'm in my office in Orlando and the job's getting built in the University of Virgin Islands and they need to pull up FaceTime and the super can walk me around and say, Scott, what's going on here? What do I need to do? So we have the tools and technology now that we can be separated by thousands of miles and we can get together and work on projects. What's that?
You can see if he's touching his neck.
Absolutely. We need to see when you say something. Like if I'm telling, the good news is you can't get me with a nail gun. You know, it's really sick. I really like LinkedIn Skype. So this is probably, in my role, I support the smaller offices with their Revit usage as well as being a project architect. And so when people have questions of how do I do something, I can jump on their machine with this, see their screen, and it's a real easy tool. I love that it tells you, you can say whether you're available in a meeting, whatever, so it gives people knowledge of what you're doing ahead of time so they know whether to interrupt you or not. Autodesk A360, this has been, we've got some designers that just don't want to get in the Revit model, but now I can publish it up in a GIF format that maintains all of the realistic materials that I've got baked into the model, and they can roll around it, perspective, they can put markups on it. I really hope that, I just started to use it, and I hope it takes off a little more. Trello, do I say much about Trello?
It's an awesome tool. If you've never used it before, the great idea is if you've ever heard of lean construction, this is all coming from those principles of Kanban. The simple idea of there's a list, one there's just a list, like Azra talked about. There's a way to mark it off so that you feel good. The way that you feel good is in most cases you have a to-do list, an in-progress list, and a done. And as you move it across that list, you get energized because you're seeing progress in your work. And seeing the progress is what motivates you to keep going. When you can't see your progress, or at the end of the day you don't see what you accomplished, you're not as motivated. So definitely check out Trello. And it has a link to connect to Revit, so check that out.
Another one we use is Smartsheet. Who do you think likes the Smartsheet? What type of person are you? You like schedules?
Yeah, like schedules.
Yeah.
More of a, in-between person.
Yeah. I'm really starting to need to like Smartsheet because I need to be organized even though I don't want to be. This is a real helpful tool because we can assign different people to different tasks. Yes?
So I am an NFP millennial non-management level employee.
Yes.
Do you have advice as to how I encourage a management style that I know I flourish under that I'm currently not getting?
You bring that leader here with you. Maybe amongst your peers first, take one of these tests and print out the results and maybe bring that to your leader and say, look, I've done some reading, I went to this class and I was taught that it's really good for us to know how to communicate and say, look, I've got this from the people I work with. Maybe you could take one too, we could have a lunch and do a lunch and learn and talk about our communication styles because we're taught that it's really important for our project. Because this is bottom line, projects are getting The problems are not because we're not good technically.
If I could jump in here, one of the things, and I did this in the beginning, with all this testing and stuff, a lot of times when you get it and you see what the answers are, you have this tendency to focus externally, like how do I build a team, how do I do all this stuff? This is where I take back the advice from the SEAL. What can I affect? I live in my 3-foot world. How can I do it? Let me go introspectively. How can I change my communication style to match that of my management? That may not always be the best answer, but it will definitely carry you farther forward with greater people skills.
But in studying for yourself too, maybe gauge where you think your leader is. If you were my employee and you came to me and said this, I would be very impressed with you.
But that's not my situation. You know what I'm saying? I don't
Right.
have someone who's open to this idea. So I guess I'm wondering if there's any advice or if you've thought about for people who know that they need a different style of management to be the best they can be, how do they ask for that at a lower level
Sure.
in the hierarchy?
I wish I had an answer, but I will think about it. Let's exchange cards and anyone in the class. I mean, that is a huge question because I'm sure not everyone gets to work in an environment that is open to this. And you may not be able to change your mind, then you get to decide whether you're better off somewhere else or you got to stick there, right?
Yeah.
All right. Asana is a great one. Very task oriented, but a little more social. Got prettier colors there with smart sheets. Snagit is so. Email and Snagit cause me more problems than they solve because I've got a great illustration on this. So I take screenshots of problems in the model and I blast them off in an email to the designer or whoever. And then I'll move on and I'll see another one and I'll hammer them. I got a call from Joe, he's one of the lead designers, and he's like, can you put all these together? These are great questions, Scott. If you can put them together in one email and send it to me at once. And I was like, well, you don't understand. I got to get this job done. Joe's giving me a deadline tomorrow, and I need the answers now. So I would do that, but I need to know right away. Like, you're going to get your answers quicker if you do what I'm saying. And he's like, but I'm like, since I'm virtually co-located, I use email as a conversation, right? It's just a conversation. He's like, would you call me on the phone and say, how's your mother? Click. Call me up on the phone again. How's your dad? Click. No, you wouldn't do that. So he taught me, I was not using the communication tools in a good way, but still high value. Just be nice about it. There's been classes on Bluebeam Studio. Studio sessions are awesome. The best form of collaboration to review a document set that I've ever found. I love it, love it, love it. And finally, Zoom. This is how we really virtually co-locate. This is our virtual building group. We do a meeting every day for 15 minutes. People from all over the company, wherever they are. I can see them, they can see me. So you get that facial talk, you all can do video conferencing for very little. We can share our screens, whatever, all this good stuff. Even bosses at home for the day because somebody's, getting his air conditioning fixed. We gather around our table, and this is our huddle. We got to find out what we're going to do for the day. And then all the people, there's a guy in the car on the lower left. This is our PM meeting, and so a lot of the people are on job sites, and instead of bringing them in the field, we have them get in their trailers, and we have the Zoom meetings so we can all know what everybody else is doing in the company. All right, well, we're a few minutes over, but thank you for staying long. Any other questions?
Thank you guys so much. I know it's a pain, but if you get a chance to fill out the surveys, that'd be wonderful. Thank you so much.
We were really scared about this since it wasn't Revit, so if you like this, let me know. If not, let us know too. We'll try it again.